ช่วงนี้ติดตามข่าวภาษาอังกฤษกับไทย PBS World ค่ะ Good evening and welcome to Thai PBS World. In Singapore, today the new confirmed cases of infection of COVID-19 is 1,400. That's in just one day. And that makes the situation in Singapore the hardest hit in the region. It's becoming worse than Indonesia, the Philippines, and Malaysia. In the Thai PBS World tonight, our online program, Kun Thep Chai Yong and me, talk to Simon Tay, Chairman of Singapore Institute of International Affairs. So it must be quite alarming in Singapore with the latest figure today.
Well, it is a very high number, and it's because it is of concern. When alarm bells ring, you must pay attention. But I think we must understand the number. As you said a bit earlier, this is a huge number because of the outbreak of foreign workers' dormitories. Because of the outbreak, our government is testing much more. And this disease, the more you test, I'm afraid, the more you will find. We are the largest number in Southeast Asia, but that's because we have tested the most. I think that if other countries start to test at the ratio we're doing, you might find the numbers will all go up, which is alarming but good. We need to assess the problem to really deal with the problem.
Simon, the spreading of the virus among the foreign workers, was it something that had been anticipated before?
Well, the foreign workers' dormitories are quite close together. So this is a lesson that where it's very difficult to socially distance people, once one case happens, it really ripples through. We have a lot of foreign workers and they're spread out over more than 40 dormitories. At the moment, the infection rate is about 1% of foreign workers. So it's not so high percentage-wise, but because of the large number and our overall small population, it makes our numbers jump.
How are you dealing with, specifically with this particular situation, then the spreading of the virus among the foreign workers?
Yes. So Singapore, in a way, has two approaches. Say, for the general population, we continue with circuit breaker. For the foreign workers, because it's more intensive and they are living so close together, we have to give special measures. Our government has put medical teams inside the dormitories. So there are medical trained staff there to try to test their symptoms, provide testing and care very early. If any one of them develops symptoms, of course, they are taken out and quarantined, or when it gets worse, they are sent into hospital care. And of course, in Singapore, providing equal care for foreign workers, and all of it is free, just like for citizens.
Simon, you said Singapore has tested more than other countries in the region. Can you tell us what's the procedure in testing in Singapore?
We are still using more of the nasal test, which we feel is more accurate. So our government has not started to roll out the DNA or blood testing yet. Blood testing, not DNA testing. So it is quite laborious. It takes hours still. Now we are, of course, the government is, of course, monitoring the availability of reliable tests. But we are a bit concerned, I would say, and want to be conservative to use the test really is very accurate. Otherwise, you test people and they could be still asymptomatic carriers. That's worse. So our numbers are not the highest in the world, but we have tested per million people over 13,000 people, which by Southeast Asian standards is the highest.
So how do you see the trend in the next 1 week?
We don't know. I think leaving aside the foreign workers, if I could talk the other problem of the overall population, the numbers actually right now are quite stable. In fact, they are falling a bit thanks to the circuit breaker. We mustn't be complacent though. If anything, we have learned that while we did very well at the start, this problem has caught us a bit slow. So in a way, the humbling lesson is that this battle isn't over until it is really over. This is a complex problem. It will be long drawn.
Yeah.
And even if you do well at some stage, a future problem might really surprise you. And the smallest weak point, this virus will find it. I think this is one of the humbling lessons that all of us will need to learn.
And with a given situation, does it mean that Singapore will have to extend circuit breaker to prolong it?
That's a good question, but it's a different question from the foreign workers. As I said, our government is trying a sort of two-system approach. For the circuit breakers, of course, there's also a lot of work to be done. As you know, we don't have a full lockdown. We've closed public spaces like Thailand, shopping malls are still open for certain shops, but we are being very close, monitoring, trying to keep social distance. It is not easy to teach citizens new habits. We're about halfway through a 4-week circuit breaker. I think, frankly, it takes 2 weeks for us to learn anything. For me also, working from home with these strange lights is not the same as being in a TV studio. So even though, we try, we're all learning new habits. We are getting cases where citizens or some companies still aren't taking it seriously enough. We've changed some rules. In the past, you could walk around Singapore without a mask. Now, we are told we have to wear a mask, unless, of course, you're running or exercising strenuously. So the circuit breaker question will only be answered on about the 4th of May, when the government will give an answer. But if we look at the region and the world around us, I think it won't go back to what it was before. We've got to be a bit more careful. Otherwise, whatever good we've done during these 4 weeks will also disappear. So I think a lot of governments are looking for what they call an exit strategy, whether it's in California or here, and we'll probably make a decision quite soon.
I see. And do you think that the fact that the ASEAN leaders and leaders from China, South Korea, and Japan met online last week and came up with a joint action plan, would this be helping with the individual countries in the region in the fight against the virus?
I'm very hopeful about ASEAN. Now, I believe that every country must be the primary actor. They must make the real effort. So in Thailand, your government. In Singapore, my government. But there are areas where we really need cooperation. When you send people across the borders or stop flights, how do you restart? That's something to think about. The fund you mentioned is critical. We have enough money in Singapore, so does Thailand. But if we don't help the countries around us, ASEAN's integration, ASEAN's community will all break down. Even now, we're facing supply chain problems. Japanese, many companies use Southeast Asia as one market, one production base. This is what ASEAN community is about. But during this crisis, some people have cut off supply chains, either intentionally or accidentally. And we've got to make sure that our supply chains, our trading goods in and out is much more resilient. Of course, medical help is important. That's why China, Japan, Korea, I think are very important players to bring in. They have the size, they have the manufacturing capability. And China, because it was early in, is now coming out. There will be some problems, but they seem to be coming out quite nicely. And they can provide some of the equipment, some of the help, and so can we. I think Thailand is ramping up its production of various test kits and masks. And I think this will be a good thing to have in the ASEAN community as a whole.
But how do you think ASEAN stands up to the crisis as a regional grouping?
Well, like I said, oftentimes when there's an initial panic, it is all countries for themselves. Even in Europe, when they talk about European Union, really very close, when the first problem happened in Italy, European Union did not do enough. It was really Italy on its own. That is the harsh truth. We first care about maybe our family, our neighborhood, then our friends, and then our country. Now, ASEAN community isn't our first response. But I'm glad it is our second response, because that shows we can work together. We have to work together because we are so close to each other. Our economies are all doing well, very integrated, the movement of our people.
That's Simon Tay from Singapore, and he sees how ASEAN can join hands together and prove ASEAN centrality to fight COVID-19 situation. And that's all from Thai PBS World tonight.